Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Wilson. I am the founder and host of People in Fundraising, a professional conversations podcast, webcast that I started about 6 months ago. Today is Friday, September 16th, 2022, and I am really excited to welcome Siobhan Crosby to our program today. Siobhan, hi, how are you?
Hi, thanks for that welcome, Tim. I'm great, especially because I'm here with you.
Well, thank you. I'm really grateful for your time. Siobhan and I worked together for several years at Harvard Business School. And I'm very grateful that that collaboration in different roles led to a friendship as well. And I just really am delighted to have a friend like Siobhan on the program today. We're going to hear a little bit about Siobhan's current role. She is the Director of Donor Relations at Bentley University in Waltham, Massachusetts. And just as a side note, I lived in Waltham for 12 years until moving to Utah a few years ago. So I love that city, the Watch City. So we'll hear a little bit about what Siobhan's doing at Bentley, as well as some other professional and personal pursuits that Siobhan has undertaken over the last few years that really bring fulfillment and tap into some of her strong technical skills. How does that sound, Siobhan?
That sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. So if you could just share with our audience how you entered the nonprofit world, please.
Well, every day is a winding road, and this road is no different. I came to nonprofit through a background in really startups, for-profit startups, internet companies, etc., doing marketing and subscription management. So that range, I always looked for companies I really believed in and wanted to work for, because that has, for me, been sort of a guiding light in how fulfilled I feel at my day job. And I need to feel a little bit of mission orientation if I'm going to execute on that mission. So I lived in Portland, Oregon from 2004 to 2011. My family is from Philadelphia. My husband's family is from Boston, and it was pretty clear after we had our daughter in 2009 that we would want to get back to the East Coast and be closer to family. I think you know something about that, having moved to Utah to be closer to your wife's family.
Yeah.
So we moved back east, and I decided I wouldn't take a job right away. We lived in Williamstown, Massachusetts, where my in-laws have a place, and I took care of a 2.5-year-old daughter. Well, there was nothing like taking care of a 2.5-year-old, which nearly pushed me to the brink. That made me realize, well, I need to get a job. So I think I belong in the working world, but what am I going to do? And we were planning to move to Boston. So I sort of started talking to a family friend who is a career coach and happened to be, at the time, she was dean of students at Harvard School, Kennedy School of Government. And she said, you really ought to look at jobs at Harvard. There's tons of jobs. You could be a piano tuner, you could be a professor. There's a whole range of jobs at Harvard. And so we started talking about what might interest me. And based on my experience in marketing, subscription, data management, she said, that development is not just asking for money. There's a whole series of jobs that has to do with the operations of development. And I think you'd be really great at it. I think you'd enjoy it. So I sort of had honed in on the organization of Harvard, just a few people have heard of it, and the area of development operations, whether that's gift processing, prospect research, or this thing called donor relations, which was pretty much a mystery to me before I got into it. But I found a job at Harvard Business School that had to do with database management, which is definitely in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And it was managing the database and doing some impact reporting for the scholarships aspect of Harvard Business School's gift funds. And I got the job, as you well know, and got into it that way. So that was, I had worked for a nonprofit before, but again, it was Oregon Catholic Press. So we sold missals and hymnals to churches all over the country. And
Oh,
it was really in the selling side of things. So I wanted to
yeah.
get out of selling things, and development operations specifically felt like a way to be on the back end of some mission guided work. And that's how I found my way into nonprofits.
Dynamite. And that's really cool. I've had a few guests, Evan Gallivan at RISD as well, who have been on the program and talked about utilizing a career coach. So I'm glad that you shared that part of the background, that someone, you knew what you were adept at and what would be a good personality fit. But as you said, not knowing about the operations side of fundraising, having someone on the inside or knowledgeable about that, that's really valuable. So how long were you at HBS?
I was at HBS just shy of 10 years. So
Wow.
yeah, that was the longest I'd worked anywhere. And for about half of that time, I thought I would be looking around, but what ended up, like halfway through, about 5 years in, I thought, oh, well, what's next? But thankfully the job and the work at HBS transitioned enough that there was always new things to take on. And HBS was really great about giving me an opportunity to change what I was doing from now and again. So my wanderlust was kept at a minimum.
Yeah, I remember thinking back, that donor relations and stewardship team, feeling that was a team that was frequently taking on new responsibilities. It was growing. There was not a lot of turnover per se, but new roles would open up and people would maybe internally move on to the team and such. So that seemed like a very energetic part of the fundraising department.
Absolutely. And, fundraisers will say it often, but we've seen the impact of it being, on the impact side of things. I always call it the thank you side of fundraising, and say that donor relations is a lot easier than saying please. We get to say thank you. And HBS, there's over 1,000 different funds to manage, and going through a campaign, you're adding new and interesting gifts, and it's so important, so important to tell the story of what those gifts do.
Yeah.
Not only because it's our responsibility, but also because it inspires joy, in having done something that meaningful. And it also, we hope, might inspire future giving. And so it's an important partnership for the development side of the house to be working with the thank you side.
I love that. That's a great way of describing that. Very cool. So you mentioned you were there for almost 10 years at HBS. Tell us about what went into your decision to pursue the opportunity at Bentley, and how long you've been there.
Another great question. Yeah. So I've been at Bentley. It'll be 2 years in January. It was mid-pandemic online work times. I wasn't really looking for anything new to do, especially since I had recently taken on the role of part-time teacher or classroom moderator for my then kindergartner or then first grader and sixth grader, just because that's what every parent was doing in that year. Our kids were home half of the time, and the last thing on my mind was taking on another, starting that learning curve all over again for myself.
Sure.
That being said, I had a friend, or still have a friend, at Bentley University who has been there for well over 15 years. And she had constantly been saying, like, oh, you should come check out Bentley. It's close to home. Bentley is a business university pretty much for undergrads. I mean, there's a component of liberal arts, but it's focused on business. So it has that similar sort of like, we educate leaders who make a difference in the world. That's the HBS tagline. And then Bentley is Bentley for business, Bentley for good. So it's sort of like this idea that we can change the world through business, which is something that really excites me. That doesn't necessarily mean every student is going on to do that, but just the fact that Bentley and HBS sort of embody that in their school missions. It's really important to me. So Bentley was interesting in that way. And then my friend said, oh, they have something open in your area. And I looked into it, and it was a director position, which would be an advancement at my career as an associate director at that time. It was a little intimidating, one of those things like, can I actually do this? But I went ahead and applied for it, and then feel pretty proud that I got a job offer through Zoom interviews only. You know, nobody was really going into their offices or anything like that. So I do like to think I am pretty personable and somehow managed to shine in that way. And they offered me the job. So
awesome.
Then came the wrestling, you know, the moment of like, do I do this, or was I just this an exercise? But it felt like a natural continuation of my career, and like it was time to test myself and try out being a leader. You know, and the department is small. At Bentley, we have a little under a third of the funds that HBS has, but still growing that list thanks to a campaign for Be a Force that we're in right now in our public phase. And so I thought, well, this is an opportunity to do what I like most, which is help teams and individuals like put systems in place so that things can work well at a larger scale, and reach out to donors at the Bentley, you know, ecosystem, and tell them the impact. So I went for it. Yeah.
Dynamite.
And now we're coming up. We're doing really well in our fundraising campaign. We're over around $90 million of our $100 million goal. And that's resulted in the addition of more than 75 new funds to Bentley's stewardship workload, as well as increased giving at the annual giving level. And our work is to support sort of both ends of that, so that donors at any level, really from $1 to $1 million, feel like they're making a difference for the students of Bentley, who are, by the way, just some of the sweetest, most driven. Like, it's such a warm place. And it's really fun to be around college students. So we, you know, at Harvard Business School, we were dealing with graduate students. What is amazing to me is these kids are like, they're 18, they're, you know, 18 to 23, 22, and they have such big ideas for what they'll do in the world. It's really cool to tell their stories.
Yeah, that's really something special about working at an undergraduate institution. And are you on campus? Can you tell us about your work schedule?
That's a great question. So for the first 8 months, I didn't see the place. I had no idea where I worked. I mean, I knew where the campus was, and I actually would go and walk around it a little bit. But we didn't go back into the office until the fall of 2021. And now we're in a hybrid mode. So I go there a few times a week. I live, as you know, because we were carpool buddies, I live about 10-minute drive from Bentley. I am tempted to bike it, and I'm thinking of you since you're such a avid cyclist, but it's so uphill. I know that this Irish face would be just like pure pink for about 2 hours after I rode. So I haven't ridden my bike yet to the office. I've ridden my bike home, but we go a few days a week. And that's when I felt like my learning curve really started to take off. When I can see people, visit them, understand what they're doing, and just start to understand how things work, that's when I feel most comfortable and most at home. And that's what our in-office situation is like. I think that was the question.
Yeah, because working on campus, seeing the students, there's
That's right.
really special environment that I work at a similar undergraduate institution, similar in the sense that it's undergraduates, but it's more about liberal arts and other majors as well, not strictly the heavy business focus of Bentley. When I lived in Waltham, they had a director of prospect research position open up at Bentley. And I remember thinking, oh man, I could walk to Bentley and be probably an hour from where we lived.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, like driving is a necessity, but like if you can bike, get some exercise and fresh air, that's really cool too.
Yeah, that is cool. And that's right. Your question was about seeing the students on campus. And from time to time on the days that I'm there, I like to get out and walk around and just see kids on the quads, the kids in the cafe who are really standing in the way between me and my sandwich, but that's right. It just feels like a buzz of energy and hope and excitement. And I definitely love it.
That's great. So cool. And you're coming up on 2 years there. So very nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Siobhan, I wanted to pivot from the day-to-day part of our conversation and ask about some questions relating to side projects and passions of yours, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So, yes, and I think, and I may get some of the names slightly off, but I think you had launched, building upon your technical skills, you had launched a business called Helpnology. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I'm not sure whether I had launched in the past or am launching or will launch.
Yeah.
But,
Well, so tell us about, and I think there may be a few others that tap into, again, those technical skills and the passion you have for using technology to bridge, I think it's intergenerational is the focus of Helpnology. If you can describe that, please.
Yeah. Well, so have you ever gotten a call from a parent or a aunt, uncle, whomever, somebody who might have been born before computers were in every home? And it seems like a basic question, but it turns into a battle of patience. Ever happened to anybody you know? Not to put you on the spot.
Happens to me. And in fact, Siobhan, I'm now doing that with my kids.
So, you're that guy now.
I'm that guy. Yes.
Yes. I mean, aren't we all?
Yeah. I'm guilty of that.
Yeah. Well, and it turns out that I am too. I think so since I was a kid, I have always enjoyed it. Helping, like my mom, when I was 10 years old, took on the job of publishing our quarterly parish newsletter.
Oh.
And so she would sit down, she's a writer. And so she would sit down at the computer and write up the updates for the church. And then she would sort of say, like, okay, now I got to put this into a format that doesn't look like a letter, basically. And she used Quark Express, I think was the name of the software. It's pretty ancient at this time.
Okay.
And she was pulling her hair out and she could not figure it out. But I love tinkering with technology, and that's helped me out in professional world and just in life. It's something that's very fulfilling for me. So I essentially taught my mom how to use the software, and the relationship has been like that ever since. She's really quite technically savvy among her peers, even though she lacks the confidence sometimes to try things out and mess up and get them wrong, because that is how the digital native generation, like the kids who were born with an iPhone in existence in their lifetime, they just learn technology by experimentation and messing up with it, trial and error, and they're not afraid of breaking something, which is in contrast to the people in my parents' generation who when they were learning first about computers, it was like, don't touch this key or else you'll delete the entire database.
Right.
But that's changed, and there's more backups now, and there's more fail safes. Like if you're going to delete all your photos, it'll probably ask you, are you sure you want to delete? And then you have to hit delete twice. I'm always amazed at how people who are less versed in technology can end up deleting the whole thing. It can happen, but it's harder to do it, and it takes a lot of confidence in clicking buttons. So what I want to do with Helpnology is to sort of provide tech help and tech support with that patience and compassion that it's sometimes hard for people in our own family to have. Understandably, it's like trying to teach your child to drive, which I haven't had the pleasure of trying to do yet, but I know that you put her and me in a car and her behind the wheel, like I would be I practically try to take over and take the wheel from her, and nobody's going to learn anything. But maybe if I can come into somebody's house and remind them how much they actually already know about, say, I mean, cooking, for example, like my mom can cook like a 5-course meal, and yet she's afraid to send a picture via email. But if we can kind of talk to her about the recipes that it takes, it's like you just need a photo and you need an email system. We can put them together. We can get it out.
Interesting.
I'd like to think that I can help people think in metaphors and build some of the confidence that they need to take chances in technology. So I don't know what the business model looks like quite yet, whether it's one-on-one help or maybe one-to-many training. Like, how do you use Venmo? You know, everybody's getting around with Venmo, but if you don't know these things, you're going to feel left behind pretty quickly. And isolation and loneliness is like one of the leading causes of issues for older folks as they age, and 80 or 90% of the American population wants to age in their own home, and to do that safely, being able to leverage some of these automation technologies and connection like social media is going to be instrumental in helping them stay part of the fabric of our society and communities. And that's really my mission behind all of this, is to keep people connected and safe and happy, while maybe diffusing and taking away a little of the fear that surrounds all of these technologies as well.
Yeah, I've got to say, Siobhan, as you were describing the audience and the mission, the tech solutions you want to provide, I mean, that totally resonates with me and my experience. My parents are still in Massachusetts and they're in their 70s. And, you know, just we keep in touch pretty frequently. But you know, my mom doesn't have an email address. You know, I think she might be the person who'd be afraid that if I push one thing, then I'm going to set the house on fire. You know, even Facebook was a bit of a learning curve just to comment on a photograph that I posted so that they would be aware of how their grandkids are doing out here. Sending an email with a Zoom link to my parents to say, hey, this Sunday after church, I want to talk with you guys. And they clicked on the link like on Friday. And then my dad texts me and is like, the meeting hasn't started yet. And I'm like, yeah, because the meeting is in 2 days. So just some of those finer details, even about, you know, the kind of the messaging of it, without me feeling like I've got to call them and say, oh, the meeting is on Sunday. So when you get the email, don't click on the link yet. Some of that wherewithal, just generationally, is not the same as it is for my generation and then our kids' generation either. So that sounds like a fascinating concept that would have a real big reach, I would imagine. So how do you allocate time and energy toward some endeavor like that, where you have this full-time job and you've got 2 young kids? You're not yet driving with them, but I've been driving with mine, and it's a balance of, how much do I guide my daughters as they're driving the car, and how much do I let them figure it out on their own? Or they'll say, do I have the right of way? Can I turn now? And there's no traffic coming toward them. And I've said, you tell me, you're in the driver's seat.
Wow. Yes.
So, but that's been a learning, because my original instinct months ago was, yeah, the road is clear. You can turn. You've got a green light. Go ahead and turn.
It takes an immeasurable amount of patience, though.
Yes. But so back to my question for you, in terms of allocating time, energy, patience to pursuits like healthnology, how does that work for you in your current circumstances?
Well, admittedly, I've been talking about this for a lot of years.
Okay.
This business, and I have had clients here and there, just time to time. I've also done some volunteer work with our local community organization called Newton at Home, which is for folks who are specifically aging in place and trying to identify what it is that they need to learn and how they need to learn. I leveraged, love saying that word, leverage. That's such a buzzword. Okay. I took advantage of, I think, when I was at Harvard, the extension school courses there. And I did a certificate in learning design and online instruction, which was hugely helpful in thinking about not only how I might want to model this, because I think it's got an education component, like whether it's packaged courses or live online courses. I'd like to reach more people than just the person whose house I can go to and fix their printer.
Yeah.
So I've been preparing for a lot of years. When I get to the point of, okay, it's time to do something about it, is when I get a little scared and I start to think, well, I don't know what to do next. I'm not sure what's the most, what are people searching for the most? Like, do they need to know about Apple Watches, or do they need to know about smart home assistants? So earlier this year, I did a survey, pretty much to all my friends and family, whether they were on the teaching end of technology or on the learning end of technology. And I took the pulse there, and what everybody is sort of talking about is that need for patience, for compassion, whether it's with themselves or their student, if like somebody was teaching their parents about technology. And then that was really helpful to learn. Now, where I find the time for it is I used to not sleep a lot. But as I've wisened up a little bit, I definitely sleep a little more now.
Good for you.
So what I've been working on lately is a website. I feel like I need a place to put those thoughts when I do have time, like a blog where I can sort of build a following and learn from the people who are reading and who are commenting or who are interacting in some way what they need, because then I think that'll be better positioned to offer something in the future.
Sure.
The upside of this horrible pandemic that we've just all lived through is that, you even are sending your parents a Zoom link in the first place. I mean, this is something that 4 or 5 years ago was not really the norm.
Right.
And my hope is that I can do some online education outside of work hours to provide that. And that's sort of how I'm going to do it. I'm still figuring that out. If anybody has ideas or wants to join the venture, feel free to reach out to me. I think I could use a partner in this would probably be helpful. And then once
Yeah.
I get my website up and running, I'm going to open up a couple hours a week where I can do one-on-one support for people, probably in their homes or even online. I can do it remotely. I just beeped. Talk about me being a tech expert. I just touched my watch and it made something beep on my phone. So there you have it. The key thing is the expertise is not, it's not black and white. It's not like knowing about technology is knowing how to do everything or doing it right always. It's about having the curiosity and the openness to learning. And that's what I'm trying to do with that. I will also say that one of the bonus features of my current organization is that in the summer, we have summer Fridays. So we work longer days, Monday through Thursday, and we all have off on Fridays. So I'm planning to, every year I've said this is my second series of summer Fridays. I'm like, oh, now I'm going to have clients on Fridays and make it work. I didn't end up doing that this year. I was working more on the website content, but I should have that ready to launch in the next few months at helpnology.com. Don't go to helpnology.com right now. It's not great. But if you're viewing this in a few weeks, I feel safe. It's safe to go there. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the time you took, Siobhan, to talk about this endeavor, what brought you to it, the passion you have for it, the skills you have for it, and even the curiosity to learn additional skills and to be patient to develop those skills. And I mean, I can totally relate with you and Helpnology to me and this people in fundraising endeavor is that, and I think I'm going to do a video at some point, like a very brief one, just to have someone interview me about, why I launched this, what did I learn, what is, a persistent challenge. One of those is, you're seeing it right now, is the lighting is still a challenge for me. So sometimes I'm even adjusting it as we speak, with an interviewee because, it's you're on the East Coast at noon 1, and I'm in my basement at 11:15 in Utah. So this, just natural light and overhead light is not ideal, but still just feeling like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be professional enough. It has to be personable enough to get the content out and to feel good about it, and to have that passion for, hey, this is an idea I have, and it could go in various directions. I may need to fine tune things along the way. I'm with you about my website. Like, I didn't want anyone to see it for a while, and so I started it in February. I didn't go live with it until May. So yeah, I think, with these endeavors outside of our day jobs and our families, it can be really tricky, at least in my experience, and it sounds maybe like you as well, to find both the time and the energy, but also to find a limit so that it doesn't crowd out the other important parts of our lives.
Yes to that. And the last 3 years have definitely been an education in setting boundaries with myself. Something that I've never really been that strong in, but have gotten better at over the last few years, because at some point I just was like reached a breaking point of just like, I can't. And then it's also like, who am I doing this for? And if I'm not able to bring my whole self to my workplace, to my family, and to these other endeavors, in good condition, then it's kind of not good for any of us. So you might be surprised to hear that I go to bed at like 9:30 now.
Good for you.
Every night. And I love it.
That's good. Yeah, because I remember when we worked at HBS, there were conversations about, I was up until 1:30, and we rolled in at 8:30 or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not sustainable.
Yeah.
I did really hit a wall, like a brick wall, late 2021. but I've thankfully had and thankfully been able to be open with my family and with my workplace about like I need to find a new balance, and really appreciative for their support through all of that.
That's great. Yeah, and that's been my experience a little bit too, is like trying to recognize when I'm burning myself out, because then I'm no good to anyone.
Yeah.
And even admitting to myself and to others, like, hey, I need to dial this back. I need more sleep, more exercise, whatever it is. Yeah, it's a process.
That's the surfboard of life, and like with a surfboard, with surfing, which I do not do, but I can imagine, the waves are constant, and you're always having to refine that balancing. So like, what if balance is not finding the stasis where it's in perfect order, but balance is using your weight to rebalance constantly and recognizing when you're in those situations that are untenable or out of control. And if you have a group of people who can help go raise the flags with you, I think we get back to balance that much faster.
I like that a lot. And you mentioned earlier, your intellect, your personality, you often think and use metaphors, and I like that with the surfboard. Very cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, Siobhan, this has been such a fun and enjoyable conversation. Just want to be mindful of your time. Any last thoughts? Anything you would like to sign off with?
I think I just would like to say what an inspiration seeing you undertake this people in fundraising effort has been. I look at it from the outside and I think, oh, there goes somebody else, doing his thing, and it's perfect and it's wonderful. But just talking with you today has reminded me that everything is in development always. And the best thing you can do is get started. And I just think it's awesome to see you've been doing this. And I really appreciate you thinking of me to participate. And I look forward to what's to come for both of us.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. And yeah, it's very gratifying to hear that from someone that, we've known each other for so long, and not just colleagues, but friends. I really appreciate that, Siobhan. And I'd love to talk with you offline, whether it's more, whether it continues to be theoretical, but also practical, about the elements of helpnology that you would like to move on.
Awesome.
And, perhaps share the good, the bad, the trial that that this People in Fundraising has been too. Because I think that. I think just sharing, I mean, you were very kind to say, nice things about this, and it is a labor of love for me. But I also think like sharing what I've learned beyond the delivered content, I'd love to impart some of that to you to help you with your project.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I accept, and it's recorded, so
it'll have to be before 9:30. So
okay. Yeah.
We'll find a weeknight, that works.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks,
Siobhan,
Tim.
oh yeah, thank you so much for being on the program today. It's been really enjoyable.
Likewise.
So yeah, for our audience, you can find Siobhan Crosby's conversation on my website, peopleinfundraising.com, probably in about a month from now. And also it'll go live on LinkedIn on a Monday, the exact same time it goes live on the website. I'll be taking a few weeks off later in 2022 to get these conversations. So there's balance. There's that surfboard metaphor. Taking some time off from the interview piece of this and the writing piece to get these conversations actually on a true podcast, Apple Podcast platform as well. So thank you for your support. Thank you for listening and watching, and have a great day.